I'm testing my most detailed modern LEGO planes to see which design is the most survivable by doing violent crash tests. Yes, I'm sacrificing my perfect replicas of real-life plane designs to decide which plane in the world is the most deadly, whether it's military or supersonic or passenger or the famous Boeing 737... what? Yeah, let's strip away the whole cabin off a bunch of planes to make this ridiculous fleet. Is it easier to survive a plane crash if your plane is smaller? These will find out the hard way. But for the first time with mini planes, I'm going to give them accurate house liveries from their company. Just like here on the Boeing 7 and the insane Airbus A38, next to the Airbus A3, the Illusion IL6 and the Comac C9. But to test which one's the deadliest, how do we even know when passengers have died? They're just minifigures. If they stay sat in their seat after a crash, they have survived. But if the passengers fall out of their seat, they have not survived. But what if we crash all 5 planes at the same time? Let's bring back an old friend, the pool that practically built this channel, and time to somehow stack these 5 planes and launch them all right now. They spread out mid-air with the C9 at the bottom impacting first, then getting pancaked by the rest. The A38 smacks the water hardest, and the A3 plunges in last, looking pretty much unchanged, unlike the IL6 which completely disintegrated. But 8 out of 10 survivors gives us an impressive survivability of 80% for the mini planes, as we only had 2 fatalities, but this is nothing compared to the deadly crashes later on, as we'll be getting far lower survivability scores with oceans of wreckage from the bigger planes. And this crash might surprise you, as this exact wing shape is very rare for a passenger plane. It's one that's never been built from LEGO before and might just be my coolest build on this channel. This one-of-a-kind cabin stretches to become wider at the front, carrying 60 to 80 passengers in all business class seating. It's not the Concorde, as this plane has elegant horizontal stabilizers and 4 engines known as the Boom Symphony. Let's shove it on this ice puddle and insert our passengers, who will test how deadly the speed of a crash can be, as we'll be straining this plane past its aerodynamic limits very shortly. This plane is far from fictional. It has been ordered by United, American and Japan Airlines despite getting delayed tons of times. It might finally come in 2030. Yes, it's the Boom Overture. The first supersonic airliner in 27 years. It aims to connect London, New York, Paris, Washington, Tokyo and Honolulu. Fly it for $5,000, actually 4 times less than Concorde, and there were only 14 Concordes, whereas 130 Overtures may be ordered. Concorde was designed by nations, but Overture by one single company, so can you see this future being real? Before we destroy it in the velocity test, where we're gonna see how much the Overture must accelerate until the force of the air will break apart the airframe. But surely that must be pretty fast. How can I launch a LEGO plane at extreme speeds? The plan is to hold Overture out and just keep accelerating the car until something happens. The real Overture is 80 times bigger than my build, so multiplying my plane's speed by 80 gives a relative velocity that the minifigures feel at their scale. Maybe we'll break the sound barrier, starting now. We begin at about 5 miles per hour, but speeding up fast to 10 miles per hour multiplied by 80 gives a relative velocity already past 800 miles per hour. Our speed has now doubled past 20, the wind in my face is getting absurd, and it's getting difficult to keep this plane straight in the air. The Overture is now past Mach 2. We're about to pass 30 miles per hour when an engine breaks off. The plane becomes unbalanced and rolls sharp to the right, inverting and exploding into a cloud of supersonic parts filled with a huge momentum, scattering on the road into the longest debris field I've ever had from a crash. At just 31 miles per hour, we technically got our Overture 3 times the speed of sound before disintegration, which makes sense as its top speed will be Mach 1.7. Oh no, all minifigures were thrown out of their seats, but we did only have 6 occupants. We need a crash with more potential for catastrophe. Okay, maybe nothing nuclear. Oh, is that the Northrop B2 Spirit? I mean the B2 Spirit. Oh, come on, get out! It's not what you think. This B2 build comes as a set, one of the most impressive ones I've ever seen, doing what LEGO is too scared to do. There are 1,977 parts, which will make this crash test ever more satisfying. All I've got to do is follow the instructions. Look at that detail. Well, good luck, because it's going to test what crash is deadlier, pool or sea, the question that's needed to be answered ever since I got popular. The engines are embedded in the wings for maximum stealth. The B2 almost seems 2D because everything is optimized to be undetectable. Its sensitive surface absorbs radar energy. It relies on computer systems for stability, and with room for 80 guided missiles, it's the most expensive aircraft of all time at $2 billion and responsible for the most expensive plane crash when one crashed in 2008. And this is so overkill. The set comes with a collection of 42 intercontinental ballistic missile things, which fit neatly in the compartment. And I know what you must be dying to know about this intricate set. Where did I get this? It's my first non-Lego plane I'm about to destroy. You can get this same set from Let's Bricks, but do not get the B2 unless you use the link in the description, as you'll get 18% off this stealth bomber only if you use the discount code SUPER. Isn't that convenient for the US Air Force? Apart from how we're about to test if a pool crash is more destructive than the British oceans. Let's go! The B2 banks hard, turning sharp to the left before slapping down, seemingly fine, but has actually fractured in multiple places. But there's no room for passengers in this model, so how are we going to measure survivability? Well, we just count how many parts broke off. 87 broke off here, and subtract that from the total, then get a percentage of 95% survivability. That's surprising. But the ocean waters are rough. There are strong tides and every possibility of stuff just getting all swept away, as we're crashing it by one of the biggest shipping ports in northern England, somewhere just up here by Liverpool at New Brighton Beach, where the B2 sways in the seaside wind, and the realism here is pretty incredible. Like, imagine you're watching some wild airshow footage. But the B2 will face a major loss of control. And yes, B2 Pizza is nice, I do recommend. So how survivable is an ocean crash? The B2 struggles to stabilize itself and begins to roll due to a flap imbalance, slicing into the water's surface at first contact, then getting its wing torn off, throwing the rest of the plane across towards the stone shore, which detaches the other wing. With the B2 Spirit split in thirds, that gives a 33% survivability, as the cabin got very lucky, which would not have happened if we did this crash on land, specifically in a city. As I'm not just gonna test a crash in a city for my first time, but also simulate an emergency landing to give the passengers a chance, because pilots are smart, usually. What's special about this central fuel tank is that alone it's just as long as our B2 Spirit was. Yes, that means we're finally crash testing a wide-body plane, a very special one, the world's largest twin-engine airliner with a vast cabin that's both wide and long. To lift it are these monstrous wings, and we've even got working flaps. But still, this is nothing without its immense cabin. And now I'm about to drop my second most highly requested nose design. Yeah, I finally put in those hours and tried to nicely round it off for a smoother design than any other nose. Though there's one delicate feature that separates this Boeing 777 from the thousands already worldwide, as this ultra-rare variant has wings so much bigger they need folding winglets to fit in airport gates. And look at this intimidating triple landing gear with full tilt. But the most impressive feature are the colossal engines, which alone are as wide as a Boeing 737 cabin, meaning that this cabin needs to be pretty immense, a capacity for 400 passengers. Well, I can only fit 50, but who cares? Remember how we did house liveries on the mini planes like the Boeing 7 Max? Well, let's take that to the max, making all these intricate lines that the Boeing livery has and the icons of the airlines that will operate the Boeing 777-9. The largest of the 777X family, set to come in 2027, will replace the biggest passenger planes, 747s and A380s, and be a serious competitor with Airbus. The 777X takes off from Boeing Field, Seattle, Washington State. This test flight will prove the agility of the airframe evolved from the 787. What they don't know is it'll end up being a crash test, as they're nearing the city of Seattle. So I've made a couple of fictional high-rises and a replica of Seattle's iconic Space Needle with a very busy observation deck. The 777 nears the city with hundreds of plane spotters watching it. It climbs into a steep bank. It continues rolling until it's 90 degrees on its side, stressing the engineering to the limit. To stop it stalling, the plane starts to dive, but it's losing altitude fast, so they pull up, bank, and lower the gear when they reach a very low altitude. Plane spotters get the pics of their life before the plane suddenly veers. The wing has been sliced, but before the 777 rolls into the ground, pilots cut the thrust in the left engine and put max power in the right side, coming down for the most violent emergency landing on this busy street. Landing hard, ripping the wings off, crushing cars and vaulting into the building at the end, violently pushing it down, then rolling over and slumping down on its split open cabin to give us a final survivability result from the inverted fuselage within this wreck of Lego. So let's have a look inside. Wow, what were you guys doing in this test flight? Some are fine, though a bunch have been taken out, leaving 22 out of 50 alive. 44% have survived the emergency landing simulation. But remember I said that 777 nose design was my second most requested? Because this plane is one of the most popular, sleek and loved aircraft in modern aviation. And with its crash test, we need to step up the realism, a ditching in water after a dual engine failure. Historically, these have been relatively survivable, but let me tell you that this one's gonna be different. We're starting with a difficult part right at the nose. It's 10 studs wide, and I've tried to make it smooth yet sharp at the end, as it's the Airbus A350 nose. Pointy and pretty satisfying. The cabin is not the world's longest like the previous plane, but it's still pretty substantial, and we have those modern wings. Here's the whole cabin floor, and we have another elegant feature at the wingtips. I've used a building technique of stacking many hinges so we can mold the perfect curved winglets, unique to the A350. Do you think this build is coming along as realistic? Because it's becoming one of my favorites. I made a much cleaner design for some beefy engines which complete the A350 build, except for our full interior with decorated galleys and all the test subjects for the crash test. So with a higher capacity, I've managed to fit 54 passengers, adding loads of weight to the Airbus A350-900 extra wide body. How would you rate it? As right now, it's just a blank canvas for one of my favorite ever aircraft liveries. Crafted by Vietnam Airlines, this color combination of cream, gold, and a deep cyan blue will require us to wrap this plane up like a present. A load of these supplies I'm using were ordered online, like all my bricks of course, and also the metallic spray paint for the shiny engine cowling style. But you can save a lot of money with coupons at lower prices for your online shopping, and these can be found automatically using Coupert, a free extension. Wow, this color combination might actually turn out beautiful. Coupert supports browsers like Chrome, Edge, Opera, Firefox, and Safari, even having 3 million weekly active users on mobile. Well, now we're finding a place to do this crash test. So why pay the full price when you don't have to when you install Coupert, make an account, and select the extension on the product's checkout page, and the link is in the description. Okay, probably not here. By the way, Coupert doesn't steal tracking links like honey to make money, but benefits the merchants and has an excellent Trustpilot score of 4.7 out of 5. Thanks for supporting my channel. The A350 departs Hanoi in Vietnam, headed for Paris, when not long into the flight, both engines seem to lose thrust at the same time. Both have failed, so the A350 is powerless, gliding towards the clearest stretch of open water. Pilots review the emergency ditching checklist, and everyone braces for the impact. The plane flares like for a smooth landing, but it's about to experience some serious force. The flight deck and forward cabin are ripped off, separating from the rest of its body and throwing out some passengers. But how many have survived this? I've managed to hoist out all of the parts, and we'll see what's happened inside. Surprisingly, all are fine in the main part of the plane, but 6 people fell out of this fracture point, giving this dramatic crash test a survivability of 89%. How can we try to take everyone out of their seats in a wide-body plane? What about crashing the largest plane in aviation history? Wait, that's wrong. The largest plane in aviation future. A future that will probably never happen unless this new company manages to build a plane bigger than the Antonov AN-225. They say it's impossible. Their only experience is making CGI planes, so let me steal their title and build the world's first radio Windrunner. But like 100 times smaller, of course. Yeah, here it is compared to a 747, a size that would define aviation achievement. So can you see that I'm making mine 12 studs wide? This challenging connection gives this plane its unusual shape, being angled up at the back, as that will help it carry one unusual specific type of cargo. There's the monster cabin with the tiny flight deck on top, completing the front. These wings alone are longer than the 777X, and they have strange winglets that face downwards, as well as 4 engines held by thick engine pylons. I've ordered a set that's perfectly fitting for what we're doing with the Windrunner, and we'll be taking both this and the Windrunner to a special place where we'll get within alarming proximity of these turbines that most people don't usually get to. This is the very tall Vestas turbine that's motorized so that all of the blades will spin like the real turbines behind us. A good build that will take the force of our final crash test. Because in case you didn't know, the main purpose of the Windrunner is to carry wind turbine blades to onshore wind farms, though we kinda need to strip everything away for this experiment, as we will measure if survivability depends on the size of your plane. This one can obviously fit the most passengers in this video. 62 minifigures are packed together in this cargo hold. With the Windrunner logo and a giant radiator pattern on the back, the Titan is ready to depart. Unlike the 747, the Windrunner can land on unpaved airfields. Well, this one is clearly paved, but it won't be once we climb up this private moorlands to get to Hindburn Wind Farm in Lancashire, with 12 turbines spinning since 2012. And to crash the Windrunner into a turbine, we're going right up close to the base of one of them. So with the Windrunner built back together, we'll assemble this turbine to get destroyed within this actual wind farm. Pulling a lever at the back starts the motor, giving us this pretty spectacular scene, about to get crushed by one of my biggest Lego planes, creating the worst aviation accident in aviation future. That will probably never happen. I tried to launch this heavy plane when the joints of the angled part break, splitting Windrunner and nosediving the forward section. The forward section crashed inverted, leaving passengers scattered everywhere and erased the turbine. Our only survivors sit upright on this section of cabin floor. But what about in the tail section, the part that broke off midair? Well, it's also inverted and... oh, just 3 survivors here leaves 20 out of 62 alive. A 32% survivability, taking Radia's Windrunner down to the bottom of the crash tests, concluding that if your plane is about to crash, make sure you're in a B2 spirit diving into a pool. Stay safe, LEGO aviators! Have you considered getting your own B2 build yet? It can work for crash recreations or an elegant display piece. Thanks for watching and keep supporting the community.